You ever wonder when you became a liar? Not the kind that steals or cheats. The other kind, the worst kind. The kind that smiles at strangers. The kind that says, "I'm fine," when your chest is caving in. Today I want to tell you about a man who stopped. Just stopped. And what happened to him might terrify you. Or worse, it might not. His name doesn't matter. Names are just another performance, aren't they? Labels we wear so others can file us away. So they can say I know him when they don't know anything at all. He lived in a house at the edge of everything, where the town ends and the nothing begins. You know the kind of place. The kind that makes you drive faster. The kind that reminds you that civilization is just a thin agreement we all pretend is permanent. For 43 years he woke up and put on a face. Not his face. Never his face. The face his wife wanted. The face his boss expected. The face strangers felt comfortable around. The face that said, "I'm harmless, I'm normal, I'm one of you." And maybe he was. Maybe that's the tragedy. Maybe we're all just variations of the same performance, thinking our particular lie is somehow unique. Tell me something. When was the last time you showed someone who you really are? No, not the curated version. Not the dinner party you. Not the everything's under control you. The you that exists at 3 a.m. when sleep won't come and the thoughts get loud. The you that wonders if any of this matters. The you that's reading these words right now and feeling something uncurl in your chest because someone finally said it out loud. He woke up one Tuesday because doesn't everything die on a Tuesday? And he looked in the bathroom mirror, the same mirror he'd looked in for 43 years. Same cracks in the corner where he dropped his razor that one hungover morning. Same water spots he kept meaning to clean. But this time something was different, or maybe nothing was different, and he just finally had the courage to see it. 43 years of faces stared back. The eager young man who thought he'd change the world. The tired father who settled for paying bills. The faithful husband who confused routine with love. The reliable employee who traded dreams for dental insurance. All of them there in the wrinkles around his eyes and the gray threading through his hair, in the slight downward pull of his mouth that had become his default expression without him noticing. And he thought, I don't know this person. Worse. He thought, this person doesn't know me. There's a difference, you understand. Not knowing yourself is sad. Not being known by the face you wear every day, that's something else entirely. That's horror. That's realizing you've been a stranger piloting your own body for decades, so he stopped. Just like that. No dramatic decision, no philosophical epiphany. He just stopped pretending. And the world immediately began to punish him for it. His wife asked him how he slept, a simple question. The kind we ask without wanting real answers. The kind that's really just code for confirm that everything is normal and nothing has changed. He looked at her, and maybe for the first time in years he saw her. Not the idea of her, not the role of wife. Her. This woman he'd shared a bed with for 2 decades but barely knew. This stranger wearing a face he'd memorized but never truly seen. He said, like a corpse rehearsing. She laughed, nervous. The way people laugh when they're not sure if you're joking. The way we all laugh when someone accidentally tells the truth at breakfast. When the mask slips and we see the darkness underneath and we need to make it funny, make it safe, make it go away. She waited for him to laugh too, to signal that it was a joke, that everything was still okay, that the script was still being followed. He didn't laugh. He just poured his coffee and watched the steam rise and dissipate and wondered if that's all we are. Heat leaving matter. Energy escaping form. Entropy with consciousness. At work they asked how his weekend was. The Monday morning ritual, the tribal greeting, the way we establish that we're all still playing the game. Still following the rules, still pretending that these fluorescent lit prisons are somehow meaningful. He looked around the office. Gray cubicles, artificial light, the low hum of computers and quiet desperation, people typing emails that don't matter, attending meetings that solve nothing, climbing ladders that lead nowhere. He said, I watched television and wondered why I'm alive. The office got quiet. That special kind of quiet. The kind that says, we don't do truth here. The kind that says, you've broken the contract. The kind that says, there are rules and you just violated the most important one. Keep it comfortable. His coworker Dave from accounting. The one who always talks about his kids' soccer games like they're matters of international importance. Dave from accounting laughed. Forced. Too loud. Trying to repair the breach. Trying to signal to everyone that it was a joke, just a dark joke. We all have those days, right? But he wasn't joking. You know that quiet. You've caused it. Maybe yesterday. Maybe this morning. Maybe right now as you're listening to this and realizing how much of your life is spent avoiding exactly this kind of quiet. Because we've all agreed, haven't we? We've all signed the contract written in invisible ink. Keep it light. Keep it surface. Keep it comfortable. Don't talk about the fact that we spend the majority of our waking lives doing things we don't care about for money that's never enough to buy the happiness we were promised. Don't mention that we're all slowly dying and pretending we're not. Don't acknowledge that most of us are strangers to ourselves and everyone around us. But he tore up the contract. When his neighbor, the one who always says beautiful day, regardless of weather, regardless of reality, as if enthusiasm could substitute for truth, when his neighbor said beautiful day, he stopped. Actually stopped walking. Looked at the gray sky, the dead grass, the cold wind cutting through his jacket, the smell of exhaust from passing cars, the sound of a distant siren. All the small evidences of decay we train ourselves not to notice, and said, "Is it, or are we just terrified of silence?" The neighbor's smile froze. You know that look. That moment when someone realizes they've stumbled into quicksand disguised as a sidewalk. When a simple social transaction becomes something dangerous, something real. The neighbor mumbled something about needing to get going and walked away faster than necessary. And he hasn't spoken to him since. None of them have. They started avoiding him. Of course they did. Truth is a disease in a world built on comfortable lies. And we quarantine the sick, don't we? We isolate the infected. Not with walls or locked doors, but with something more elegant, more insidious. We simply stop seeing them. They're still there, still talking, still existing, but we've learned to look through them, to hear without listening, to be present without being there. His wife moved to her sister's, said she needed space to think. Space. As if distance creates clarity. As if running from mirrors makes you less visible. As if you can think yourself out of a feeling you refuse to feel. She took the good towels and half the books and the coffee maker that worked properly, leaving him with the one that sometimes shorts out and smells like burning plastic. Symbolic, maybe. Or maybe just practical. Maybe when a marriage ends, someone has to get the good coffee maker. She called it temporary. They always do. Temporary is the word we use when we know something is permanent but aren't ready to admit it. When we need time to build the story we'll tell ourselves and others. Time to become the victim or the hero instead of just another person who couldn't make it work. He didn't argue. What would be the point? You can't logic someone into loving you. You can't truth someone into wanting to stay. His friend stopped calling. Not all at once. That would be too honest. That would require the confrontation of actually saying, we don't want you around anymore. No, they just faded. Like morning mist, like promises. Like everything that can't survive daylight. The texts got shorter. The excuses more elaborate. So busy lately. Crazy at work. Let's catch up soon. Soon. That beautiful lie. Soon. Which means never but sounds like maybe. You're thinking. He pushed them away. Are you thinking that? Let me ask you something harder. If everyone leaves when you stop pretending, were they ever really there? Or were they in love with your performance? With the character you played? With the version of you that made them comfortable? And when that version died, when you finally murdered the false self you'd been maintaining for their benefit, they mourned the death and left the funeral. Because they didn't come for you. They came for who you pretended to be. He sat on his porch, the one that needs painting, the one that's been on the list for 6 years, the one that's rotting slowly from the bottom up the way everything rots eventually, and he watched the sun set every day. Same porch, same sun dying. And one evening he said out loud to no one, "This is what we are, organisms watching a star collapse, pretending it's beautiful instead of inevitable." The sky didn't argue. The sky never does. The sky just keeps doing what it does, indifferent to our interpretations, our meanings, our desperate attempts to make the temporary feel permanent. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Someone's television murmured through thin walls. A car passed, its headlights briefly illuminating the porch before moving on, returning him to darkness. Life continued around him. It always does. The world doesn't stop when you do. That's the cruel joke. You think you matter, we all think we matter, but remove yourself from the equation and the equation barely notices. The variables adjust, the balance shifts, and everything continues. They say isolation breaks people. They're wrong. Isolation just shows you what was already broken. It's the X-ray that reveals the fractures you've been walking on for years. The mirror that reflects without the flattering light you've been using. The silence that lets you hear all the things you've been drowning out with noise and busyness and the constant presence of others. He stopped shaving. What's the point? Whiskers grow, whiskers fall out, entropy in slow motion. Each hair a tiny monument to the body's insistence on continuing despite the mind's indifference. He'd spent decades scraping metal across his face every morning, this strange ritual we never question. removing hair that will just grow back, tidying an animal that refuses to be tidy. And for what? So strangers would take him seriously? So his wife would kiss him without complaint? So he could pretend he was civilized instead of just a temporarily housebroken mammal? He stopped watching the news. Why? The world ends every day and starts again every morning. The plot never changes. Different actors. Same script. Tragedy. Outrage. Scandal. Sports scores. Weather. Repeat. The news isn't information. It's a story we tell ourselves about why we should be afraid, why we should be angry, why we should stay tuned. It's a product designed to manufacture anxiety because anxious people watch more, buy more, comply more. He stopped answering the phone when it rang. Because every call is the same, isn't it? How are you? Translation. Perform wellness. Make me comfortable. Confirm that the lie we're all living is sustainable. Nobody really wants to know how you are. They want to know that you're maintaining your end of the social contract, that you're still pretending, that you haven't wandered off the reservation of acceptable behavior. When you tell the truth, I'm hollow. I'm questioning everything. I wake up disappointed that I woke up. The conversation ends quickly. You've violated the terms of service. But here's what they don't tell you about stopping pretending. The first week, you feel free. Like you've removed a heavy coat you didn't know you were wearing. Like you can finally breathe fully. The air tastes different. Colors seem brighter. You notice things you've been too busy performing to see. The way light moves across a wall, the pattern of cracks in the ceiling, the sound your house makes when it's truly empty. The first month you feel lonely. The freedom starts to feel like exile. You realize that authenticity, while liberating, is also isolating. That the price of being yourself is that most people won't like who that is. Not because there's something wrong with you, though you'll wonder if there is, but because most people are performing too, and your honesty threatens their performance. Your nakedness makes them aware of their costume. The first year you feel nothing. And nothing true, nothing is heavier than something. Sadness is at least a feeling. Anger has energy. Even despair has a certain passion to it. But nothing is the absence of passion. It's the gray space where everything is permitted because nothing matters. It's the flat line that's somehow worse than the peaks and valleys because at least those prove you're alive. He sat in his house and listened to time. Not just clocks. Time itself. The creak of floorboards settling. The groan of pipes contracting. The sigh of walls bearing weight. Houses age like people. Slowly, painfully, inevitably. The foundation cracks. The roof sags. The paint peels. And one day you realize it's not a house anymore, it's a skeleton. A monument to what used to be shelter but is now just entropy in progress. The difference is houses don't pretend they're not collapsing. A house doesn't wear makeup to cover the cracks. Doesn't tell you it's fine when the roof is leaking. Doesn't smile when its bones are breaking. A house is honest in its decay. We should all be so brave. Let me tell you about meaning. About that thing we chase like dogs chasing cars. That thing we're told we need to find as if it's hiding somewhere waiting to be discovered. As if one day we'll look under the right rock and there it will be. Purpose. Meaning. The answer to why we're here. He used to believe in meaning. When he was young and hadn't yet learned that youth is just ignorance with energy. He thought his job meant something. Thought his marriage meant something. Thought the house and the car and the 401k meant something. Thought he was building towards something. That there was a finish line somewhere and if he just kept running, kept performing, kept pretending, he'd cross it and everything would make sense. But there's no finish line. There's just more running until you can't run anymore and then you stop. And you realize you've been running in circles. That the meaning you were chasing was just a carrot on a stick you were holding yourself. That everything you thought mattered was just a story you told yourself so you wouldn't have to face the truth. It doesn't matter. None of it matters, not in the way you thought it did. His marriage didn't fail because they fell out of love. It failed because they were never in love with each other. They were in love with the idea of not being alone, with the story of husband and wife, with the performance of partnership, two actors playing roles in a play no one was watching. And when one actor breaks character, the whole production falls apart. His job didn't give him purpose. It gave him a paycheck. Purpose is what we call obligation when we want it to sound noble. You think the universe cares that you filed those reports? Attended those meetings? Met those deadlines? The universe doesn't even know you exist. You're a speck on a speck, orbiting a speck, in a universe so vast that your entire civilization could vanish tomorrow and it would be less than a rounding error in the cosmic equation. But here's the thing about meaninglessness that nobody tells you. It's not sad. It's liberating. If nothing matters, then nothing matters. The job you hate doesn't matter. The marriage that failed doesn't matter. The dreams you didn't achieve don't matter. The approval you never got doesn't matter. You're free from the tyranny of meaning, free from the burden of mattering, free to just be. He sat on his porch, that rotting stage for his one-man show about nothing, and he thought about meaning, about all the things people said mattered: family, love, success, legacy, God, country. All the grand narratives we drape over the simple animal fact of existence. We're born. We survive. We die. Everything else is decoration, story, pretending, and maybe that's okay. Maybe the pretending is the point. Maybe we're not supposed to stop. Maybe the performance is all there is, and questioning it is just another form of arrogance. The belief that you're special enough to see through the illusion, that you're brave enough to face the void, that your honesty makes you superior to all the comfortable liars surrounding you. Or maybe he's just tired. Maybe nihilism is what happens when you're too exhausted to maintain hope, when the weight of pretending finally exceeds your capacity to bear it, when you'd rather feel nothing than feel the wrong thing one more time. Who are you when no one's watching? Really, not the you that you think you are, not the you that you hope to be, the you that exists in the space between thoughts, in the silence after the performance, in the moment before you remember to be someone. He started exploring that question, not intentionally, not as some spiritual quest or self-help journey, but because when everyone leaves, when all the mirrors walk away, you're left with just yourself. And yourself is a stranger you've been avoiding for decades. He found things, buried things, a box in the garage with drawings from high school, evidence of a person who thought they might be an artist, before someone, a teacher, a parent, a well-meaning adult, explained that art wasn't practical, that dreams don't pay bills, that he should be realistic. And he was. He was so realistic he forgot how to dream. Letters from an old girlfriend, before his wife, before the performance of marriage. Letters that showed a version of him that was vulnerable, that admitted fear, that asked questions instead of pretending to have answers. He tried to remember being that person and couldn't. That person died sometime between youth and responsibility, between hope and habit, between believing and just going through motions. A journal from his 20s, page after page of questions. What do I want? Who am I? What matters? Each page a testament to a person who still thought these questions had answers, who hadn't yet learned that the questions are the point, that answers are just temporary stopping points in an infinite regression of why. He read his younger self's words and felt nothing, not nostalgia, not regret, just recognition, like looking at a photograph of someone who resembles you but isn't you, a genetic echo, a rough draft, the person you were before you learned to edit yourself for public consumption. In the mirror now he saw someone else, or maybe the same person without the mask. It's hard to tell. Maybe there is no real self. Maybe we're just a collection of performances, and the one we give ourselves is no more real than the one we give others. Maybe authenticity is just another lie, the deepest one, the one where we convince ourselves there's something underneath to be authentic to. He stopped eating regular meals, not from depression, not from some eating disorder, just from realizing that meal times are social constructs. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, these are performances we do together. Rituals that structure time and give us excuses to gather. When you're alone, you eat when you're hungry. Or you don't. The body tells you what it needs. Everything else is just habit masquerading as necessity. He started sleeping at odd hours, napping in afternoon light, awake at 3 a.m. listening to the house settle, asleep at dawn when the world was waking, because why not? Work schedules, sleep schedules, all of it is just agreement. We agree to be tired at the same time, to be awake at the same time, to structure our biology around clocks we invented. But alone, accountable to no one, he let his body find its own rhythm. And it did. A strange animal rhythm that had nothing to do with productivity or society or any of the systems we build to make ourselves feel civilized. Sometimes he thought someone might visit. His wife coming back, friends checking in, even a salesman or a missionary, someone to break the silence, but nobody came. At first he told himself they would, that this was temporary, that eventually someone would care enough to reach out, to force their way past his walls and his truth and his uncomfortable honesty. But nobody did, and gradually he realized nobody was coming. This was it. This was the natural consequence of authenticity, of refusing to pretend. The world doesn't beat down your door begging for truth. It walks away from truth. It crosses the street to avoid truth. It makes plans for lunch and then cancels at the last minute because something came up, and truth is that something that came up was the realization that seeing you requires emotional labor they're not willing to perform. His phone stopped ringing. At first he didn't answer. Then it stopped ringing at all. Numbers disappeared from his contacts, not because he deleted them. They just left, changed numbers, blocked him, or maybe just forgot. Moved on to other friends, other performers, other people who knew how to keep it light. The mail still came, bills mostly. Reminders that existence has a cost even when it has no meaning. Electric bill, water bill, property tax. The bureaucracy of being alive. You still have to pay to occupy space. Still have to contribute to systems you didn't design and don't believe in. Still have to participate in the economy of survival even when you've opted out of the economy of meaning. Sometimes he'd see people through the window. Walking dogs, pushing strollers, holding hands, living lives that looked from a distance like they mattered. He'd watch them and wonder if they were pretending to, if behind every smile was the same emptiness he'd found, or if some people really did feel it, really did find meaning in walks and strollers and hand-holding. Maybe they were the lucky ones. Maybe delusion is a blessing when it's sufficiently complete. He'd see his neighbors, the ones who used to wave. They didn't wave anymore. Didn't even make eye contact. He'd become invisible, not through any dramatic rejection, but through the quiet consensus of a community protecting itself from discomfort. He was the reminder that the emperor has no clothes, and nobody wants that reminder, so they stop seeing him. In old movies, hermits are wise. Seekers travel to them, ask them questions. The hermit, having spent years in contemplation, shares profound truths. But real hermits don't get visitors seeking wisdom. They get silence, they get invisibility, they get the slow realization that wisdom doesn't matter if there's no one to hear it. And maybe it's not wisdom at all. Maybe it's just the ramblings of someone who stayed still long enough to hear their own thoughts and mistook clarity for insight. From his porch he watched humanity, like an anthropologist studying a foreign tribe, people rushing to jobs they hate, buying things they don't need, playing games whose rules they don't question, the whole elaborate dance of normal life. And he tried to remember what it felt like to believe in it, to participate without irony, to care about career advancement and home improvement and what people thought. He couldn't remember. That amnesia scared him at first, made him wonder if he'd lost something essential, but gradually he realized maybe he hadn't lost anything. Maybe he'd found something. Or maybe there's no difference. Maybe loss and discovery are the same thing looked at from different angles. He watched a man wash his car every Sunday. Same time, same methodical process. Soap, rinse, dry, wax. The car would get dirty again. This was known, accepted. And next Sunday he'd wash it again. This loop repeated until death. This was normal. This was life. And he tried to see it as meditation, as ritual, as finding peace in repetition. But all he saw was a man spending his brief allotment of consciousness removing dirt that would return. He watched a woman garden, planting flowers that would die in winter, pulling weeds that would grow back, fighting a battle against entropy that she knew she'd lose. And maybe that was the point. Maybe the knowing you'll lose but fighting anyway is what humans do, what makes us noble. Or maybe it's just what makes us human. Noble is probably too generous. He watched children play, laughing, running, pretending. They were already learning the performance, already training for adult life, playing house, playing work, rehearsing roles they'd spend their lives performing. The boy pretending to go to work, the girl pretending to cook dinner, neither knowing yet that they're already trapped. That play is just practice for the prison. And he wondered, when do we stop playing and start believing? When does the performance become the person? Is there a moment? A specific day? Or is it gradual? A slow erosion of the authentic self until all that remains is the character we've been playing, the mask that fused with the face. He tried to remember being a child. Really tried. Not the sanitized memories. Not the photograph album version. The actual experience of being young. Of not yet understanding that you're supposed to pretend. Of saying what you think. Asking why. Crying when you're sad before someone taught you that feelings are things to hide. That questions are things to stop asking. That fitting in matters more than being real. But he couldn't remember. Childhood was just stories now. Things that supposedly happened to someone who supposedly was him. But that person felt as foreign as the adult in the mirror. as if he'd been multiple people, each one dying to make room for the next. And maybe that's all we are. A series of deaths and rebirths. Each version thinking it's the real one. The final one. Until it dies too and makes room for whatever comes next. Nobody talks about how expensive it is to care. Not money expensive. Attention expensive. Energy expensive. We only have so much, you see. So much caring to spend. And we have to budget it. Ration it. Decide what deserves our finite supply of giving a damn. He'd spent his life spending carelessly. Caring about his job. His reputation. Of what people thought. Whether his lawn was as nice as his neighbor's, whether his car was new enough, whether his marriage looked happy enough, whether his life, when viewed from outside, seemed successful enough, and he never asked, successful at what? Successful by whose measure? Successful for what purpose? Now he didn't care, and people thought this made him depressed. They confused not caring with sadness. They couldn't understand that you could be not sad and still not care. That apathy isn't the same as depression. Depression is caring so much it hurts. Apathy is the absence of caring. The silence after the caring dies, and it wasn't peaceful. Not at first. At first it was terrifying, like falling, like that moment in dreams when you step off a cliff and haven't hit the ground yet, that suspension between, that space where nothing holds you and nothing catches you and you're just falling. But gradually the terror became something else. Not peace. Peace is too soft a word. Acceptance, maybe. Resignation, the understanding that nothing is holding you and nothing is catching you, and this falling is just life. We're all falling. The difference is most people pretend they're standing still, pretend the ground is solid, pretend that if they just hold on tight enough to the right things, marriage, career, house, children, they won't fall. But we're all falling, toward the same destination, the same ending, the same silence. And holding on doesn't stop the fall, it just makes your hands tired. He stopped maintaining things. The lawn grew wild, the gutters filled with leaves, the paint continued peeling, and neighbors complained. Called it an eyesore, said it was bringing down property values, as if value was something real, as if the number assigned to a house meant anything beyond our collective agreement to pretend it does. Property values, market values, the whole economy of valuation. We value things, assign worth, make spreadsheets of what matters, and none of it is real, all of it is just consensus. Agreement to pretend that paper has value, that gold has value, that labor has value, that time has value. When really value is just a story we tell about importance, and importance is just a story we tell about meaning, and meaning is just a story we tell because the alternative, that nothing means anything, is too much to bear. Or maybe not. Maybe it's not too much. Maybe we just think it is because we've never tried, because we've been told since birth that meaninglessness is darkness, that nihilism is depression, that if nothing matters, why go on? But they never tell you the next part. If nothing matters, why not go on? If it's all arbitrary anyway, why not choose to continue? Not because you have to, not because it means something, just because, just to see what happens next. So here's the question nobody wants to ask. Was he wrong? Think about it. Really think, is it better to pretend and have company, or to be honest and have nothing? Is loneliness the price of authenticity, or is connection the reward for comfortable lies? You don't have to answer, not to me. But you'll answer tonight. When you're alone, when the masks come off, and you're just you, whatever that is, whoever that is. When you're staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. and your brain won't stop asking questions you don't want to answer. When you wonder if the life you're living is the life you wanted or just the life you settled for because wanting seemed too hard, too scary, too much like risking everything for nothing. Is he free or just alone? Is there a difference? We use the word alone like it's a bad thing. Alone is punishment. Alone is failure. All alone like it's the worst thing that can happen. But maybe alone is just alone, neutral, a state. Neither good nor bad. Just different from together. And maybe we fear it not because it's terrible, but because it's honest. Because when you're alone, you can't hide behind other people, can't blame them for your unhappiness, can't distract yourself with their needs and their problems and their presence. Alone, you're stuck with yourself. And yourself might be someone you don't like very much. Someone you've been running from. Someone you've been burying under work and relationships and obligations and any damn thing to avoid looking at directly. He looked directly, that was his crime, his sin, his unforgivable offense. He stopped running and looked at what he'd been running from, and what he found was nothing. Not nothing scary. Not nothing horrible. Just nothing. The absence of the something he'd been promised. the something he'd been chasing, the something that was supposed to make it all worth it. And maybe that's the truth nobody wants to hear. There is no something, there never was. We're all chasing nothing dressed up as something. Success is nothing with a good salary. Love is nothing with company. Purpose is nothing with a good story. And meaning is nothing with elaborate justification. But we need the stories, don't we? We need to believe that the job matters, that the relationship matters, that the children we raise matter, that the things we build will outlast us, that we'll be remembered, that we mattered, that we were here, that the universe noticed. But it didn't, it doesn't, it won't. And that's not sad, that's just true. The universe is vast and indifferent, and we are small and temporary, and none of it cares. And you can spend your life raging against that truth, building monuments to your own importance, leaving legacies, making marks, mattering so hard it hurts. Or you can do what he did. Stop. Just stop. Stop pretending it matters. Stop pretending you matter. Stop pretending that any of this is anything other than what it is. A brief flicker of consciousness in an uncaring cosmos. A momentary organization of atoms that will eventually reorganize into something else. Dust to dust. Nothing to nothing. And you know what? There's a peace in that. A terrible, beautiful peace. The peace of surrendering. Of stopping the fight. Of accepting that you never mattered and never will, and that's okay. That you can live a whole life and die and be forgotten, and it doesn't make the life less lived. It doesn't make the moments less real. It doesn't make the sunsets less beautiful just because no one's keeping score. The last time I saw him, and yes, I saw him, I was there. I'm not just telling you a story I heard from someone who heard it from someone. The last time I saw him, he was sitting on that porch, unpainted, rotting slowly, honest in its decay. I'd driven past his house a dozen times, meaning to stop, meaning to check on him, meaning to do something about the nagging guilt that comes from abandoning someone, but meaning to and doing are different things. And it's easier to mean to than to do. Easier to tell yourself you care than to act like it. Easier to drive past and promise yourself next time than to stop and face what stopping means. But this time I stopped. Don't ask me why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe guilt. Maybe just the knowledge that if I didn't do it now, I'd drive past forever. That this was one of those moments where you either act or admit you're not going to act and stop pretending. He was sitting in an old chair, the kind with stuffing coming out, the kind people put on curbs with free signs. He looked, I don't know, not good, not bad, just present. Like he was fully there in a way most people never are. Most of us are somewhere else, thinking about yesterday or tomorrow, worried about work or relationships or money or health or the thousand things we use to avoid being here now. He was here now, completely, uncomfortably, totally present in his rotting chair on his rotting porch in his rotting life. I asked because someone had to ask because the silence was too heavy. I asked, "Are you happy?" Stupid question. The kind of question that has no good answer. Yes means you're delusional. No means you're depressed. And anything else means you're avoiding the question. He looked at me, through me, past me, the way someone looks when they're seeing something you can't see, when they're operating on a different frequency, when they've tuned into a truth you're still protecting yourself from. And he said, "I don't know what that word means anymore. Happy. What is it? A feeling? A state? A goal? We're told to pursue happiness like it's a place we can reach. Like if we just do the right things, right job, right partner, right house, right life, we'll arrive at happy and stay there. But happy isn't a place. It's not even a feeling. It's just the absence of unhappy. And absence isn't something. It's nothing." He paused, looked at the sun setting over the field. That field where nothing grows anymore. Where the earth has given up trying and just accepted being empty. But I know what I'm not. I'm not pretending. I'm not lying. I'm not performing. I'm not maintaining a character for an audience that doesn't care. I'm not smiling when I don't feel it. I'm not saying I'm fine when I'm not. I'm not attending parties I don't want to attend and having conversations I don't want to have and living a life I don't want to live just because it's the life I'm supposed to want. Another pause. Longer this time. Isn't that something? The way he said it, not a question, not quite. More like an offering. A thought presented for consideration. And I didn't know how to respond. Because yes, it was something, but was it enough? Is not pretending enough to build a life on? Is authenticity sufficient when it leaves you alone on a rotting porch? I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong. That connection matters. That people matter. That isolation isn't wisdom, it's just isolation. That being honest doesn't mean being alone unless your honesty is just cruelty dressed up as truth. That maybe, just maybe, the problem wasn't that everyone else was pretending. Maybe the problem was that he'd forgotten how to love the pretending. how to find beauty in the performance, how to see the meaning we create together as real, even if it's constructed. But I didn't say any of that, because looking at him, really looking, I wasn't sure I was right. Wasn't sure my comfortable lies were better than his uncomfortable truth. Wasn't sure that my full life of half-truth was superior to his empty life of full honesty. So I just said, yeah, it's something, and I left. Got in my car and drove back to my life. My job, my relationships, my pretending. And I haven't gone back, haven't called, haven't checked in. Because some part of me knows if I went back, if I really talked to him, really engaged with what he's found, I might not leave. Might not be able to return to the comfortable prison of normal life. Might see too clearly what I'm avoiding. And I'm not ready for that. Maybe I never will be. So what do we do with him? This man who stopped pretending. This man who chose authenticity over connection. This man who'd rather be alone with truth than together with lies. Do we pity him? Admire him? Ignore him? Do we call him brave or broken? Enlightened or just depressed? Maybe he's all of it. Maybe he's none of it. Maybe labels are just another form of pretending. Another way to categorize and file away and avoid really thinking about what his choice means for our choices, because that's what makes him dangerous, isn't it? Not his isolation, not his honesty, but the implicit question his existence asks. What are you pretending? What lies are you telling? What masks are you wearing? And could you survive without them? Most of us would say no, we need the masks, need the pretending, need the comfortable lies that make society possible. You can't have civilization without some shared delusion. Can't have community without some agreed-upon fiction. Can't have connection without some willingness to perform. And maybe that's okay. Maybe the pretending is the point. Maybe we're social animals and being social requires some dishonesty, some editing, some filtering of our authentic selves into something acceptable to others. Maybe total honesty is just another form of selfishness. Here's who I am. Deal with. It is freeing for you, but cruel to everyone else who has to deal with it. Or maybe not. Maybe he's found something we're all too afraid to find. Maybe his isolation is the price of authenticity and most of us just aren't willing to pay it. Maybe we'd rather have connection even if it's shallow. Rather have company even if it's false. Rather have the performance of relationship than the reality of solitude. I drive by his house sometimes. See the light on in the window? Know he's in there, alone, existing in a way most of us can't imagine. Can't tolerate, can't even conceive of as anything other than tragedy. But what if it's not? What if he's not lonely but alone? What if he's not suffering but just being? What if the tragedy isn't his isolation but our inability to imagine that isolation could be anything other than punishment? What if, and this is the thought that keeps me awake some nights, what if he's the only honest one, and the rest of us are the tragedy? Living these half-lives, these performed lives, these carefully edited versions of existence that look good from outside but feel empty from inside. You're still here, still listening. Still with me in this uncomfortable space between story and truth, between judgment and understanding, between his life and yours. And maybe you're thinking, I'm not like him. I have real relationships, real meaning, real purpose. My life is different, and maybe it is. Maybe you've found something he lost or never had. Maybe your connections are genuine. Your meaning authentic, your purpose real. Or maybe you're just better at pretending, better at the performance, better at believing your own lies. And that's not an insult. Maybe being good at pretending is what makes you human, what makes you functional, what makes you capable of building a life in a universe that doesn't care if you build one or not. He's still there, in that house, on that porch, the last man who stopped pretending, and every single day he's alone. Completely, totally, undeniably alone. With nothing but his honesty, his authenticity, his refusal to perform. And you're right now, as you hear these words, you're making a choice. Maybe not consciously, maybe not even aware you're making it, but you're choosing to go back to your life, your performances, your comfortable pretending, or to question, to wonder, to ask the dangerous questions he asked. What are you pretending? Who are you performing for? What would happen if you stopped? You won't stop, probably. Most people don't. Most people hear this story and think tragic and sad, and I'm glad I'm not him. And then they go back to their lives unchanged, back to the performance, back to the pretending, back to the comfortable prison of normal life. And that's okay. Really. There's no judgment here. No right answer. No moral to this story except the one you decide it has. Maybe he's a cautionary tale. Maybe he's a hero. Maybe he's just a man who got tired, who couldn't carry the weight anymore, who put down the burden and found that without it he couldn't move. But he's there. He exists. And his existence is a question aimed at your life. Is the pretending worth it? Is connection worth the cost of authenticity? Is belonging worth the price of your real self? Draw your own conclusions. I already have. And I'm still pretending. Still performing. Still wearing the mask, still playing the game, because maybe he's right that it's all meaningless. But maybe being right isn't the same as being happy. Maybe truth isn't the same as wisdom. Maybe honesty isn't the same as peace. Or maybe I'm just afraid. Afraid that if I stopped pretending, I'd end up like him. Alone on a rotting porch in a rotting house, watching the sun set on a rotting life. Afraid that authenticity is just another word for isolation. That being yourself means being by yourself. And maybe that fear is the most honest thing I can admit. I need the pretending. I need the performance. I need the lies we tell each other. I need to believe that this matters. That I matter. That we matter. Even if we don't, even if none of it does. Because the alternative, his alternative, is too much. Too heavy. Too real. Too true. And I'm not strong enough for that truth, are you?